What made Super Mario 64 successful? Was it the fluid and easy-to-learn controls, the open-ended star-collecting gameplay, or the iconic soundtrack? While I believe all these were factors into making Mario 64 a great game, I believe the part of the game that made it successful was the level design. And I didn't realize this until recently when I was thinking about another game, Rugrats Royal Ransom. I know that sounds crazy, but let me explain. Rugrats Royal Ransom, on the surface, is like any other licensed game, but it has something that just sticks out like a sore thumb, and that's this thing. This is what the game calls a magic helper ball, and basically this thing will just tell you where to go to complete the level. Now many will point to this as just a way to make a game easier for young children, but it is also a symptom of poor level design. The levels in Royal Ransom are too big and too open-ended, to the point where most players would get lost without the helper balls. And it was the open-endedness of those levels that made me realize that Mario 64's levels weren't as open-ended as I thought, but that's actually to the game's benefit. I've already talked about Mario 64's level design in my video comparing it to Mario Sunshine, but in that video I mainly focused on the visual design of those levels and how they weren't as connected as the world of Mario Sunshine, without really touching on the gameplay aspects of those levels. While I still agree with what I said in that video, I feel that not talking about those gameplay aspects was a huge disservice to Mario 64's levels, and that those gameplay aspects are what made Mario 64 successful. When I talk about Mario 64's success, I'm less talking about the quality of the game itself, but more so its appeal to general audiences. Looking back on the Mario series and gaming as a whole up to the point of Mario 64's release, people were only exposed to 2D gaming. You could go left or right, and sometimes up and down, but the number of different directions you could travel in were very limited. This made 2D gaming easy to grasp. People have an easier time thinking in 2D than 3D. Adding the third dimension to the mix expanded the number of directions you could travel from 4, or 8 if you count diagonals, to just about infinite. You could not just go left, right, up, and down, but forward at an angle, backward at an angle, different angles, all over the place. This opening up of movement, while revolutionary, was also a bit complicated compared to how games already handled movement. People could have easily been scared away from Mario 64 and 3D gaming if they were left on their own to explore a 3D space. Imagine if you were just dropped off somewhere you didn't recognize and were told to find something or go somewhere specific with no instructions. You'd be overwhelmed instantly and be lost. Mario 64 avoids this by creating levels that simultaneously play both as a 2D game and as a 3D game. What do I mean by this? Well, I think a perfect example of this is the first star in Bob-omb Battlefield. The star's goal is clear. Get to the top of the mountain and defeat King Bob-omb. You start at the bottom of the battlefield with the path in front of you, along with a small area to the side. The side area is a dead end, so you have to follow the path upward. This path continues past the chain chomp and towards the mountain itself, which you then circle upwards on until you reach King Bob-omb. There are a couple of side areas in the level, and different shortcuts to take if you can complete the jumps, but for the most part it's a simple journey from point A to point B. This is much like how 2D games design their levels, having the player typically go from left to right, point A to point B. And this point A to point B gameplay is embedded into each level of Mario 64. This is why the levels work both as a 2D game and a 3D game. The 2D gameplay comes from the point A to point B path you travel for each star and each level's natural flow, and the 3D gameplay comes from the many shortcuts you can take. Whomp's Fortress, for example, is structured similarly to Bob-omb Battlefield, with you slowly working your way up the fortress. The straight path through the level has you go past these face things and under the thwomps, but you can also go up into the pool and adventure around there, or use it as a shortcut past the thwomp portion. The level has a natural point A to point B flow, but you can travel any way you want. 2D level design with 3D gameplay. This concept is most apparent in the Bowser stages. Each of the 3 Bowser stages are linear obstacle course-like levels that are the most 2D-like levels in the game. You travel from the level's start to the pipe at the end to get to Bowser, point A to point B. These levels are far less open-ended than the other levels, and they have less shortcut opportunities, but they don't feel out of place because the rest of the levels have a similar 2D flow. And this 2D flow level structure is true for pretty much every level in the game, no matter how complicated the levels get, and some levels share similar designs. For example, look at Jolly Roger Bay and Dire Dire Docks. These 2 levels share more in common than just being water levels. Both levels contain 2 main sections separated by a tunnel. Each of these sections are enclosed with high walls, making them less like locations in an ocean or vast sea, but bodies of water surrounded by land, likely in a crater or cave system. The direction you swim in is straightforward, and there isn't much space to explore around in. They're nearly the same level, and they're not the only levels that have a shared underlying structure. Bob-omb Battlefield, Cool Mountain, Tall Mountain, Tiny Huge Island, and even Womb's Fortress are what I like to call the mountain levels. These levels all have the same structure of having you climb up a path that wraps around the mountain, or down in the case of Cool Mountain. Each of these levels have a couple shortcuts to cut down on travel time, but the basic paths to the top or bottom are the same, with each level stars scattered along the way. While each of these levels share the same basic structure, how they differ is what makes them feel unique. Cool Mountain and Tall Mountain have slides back down the mountain, and Cool Mountain starts with a slide down half the mountain. Tiny Huge Island contains both a small and huge version of the same level, making it easy to shortcut around when you're in the small version, with a unique giant fish enemy and an interior you can actually explore instead of just a slide. Womb's Fortress adds a tower after you defeat the Womb King with additional islands, while the other levels stay mostly the same. Shifting Sandland and Snowman's Land also share a similar structure. Both levels circle around a larger structure in the middle, Shifting Sandland's Pyramid and Snowman's Land's titular Snowman. Both of these levels have an interior structure to explore, the Pyramid and Igloo respectively, and you even enter both levels by jumping into a wall. Even the later, less linear levels have this underlying linear structure. Hazy Maze Cave starts with a branching path, one leading to the Rolling Rocks, the other leading to the Red Coin Room, and then the Toxic Maze. However, these two sections connect and circle back to each other, with each path leading to the end of the Rolling Rocks section and later to the Underground Lake and Dory. While this level is a bit more open-ended, it still very much follows the linear level design. Lethal Lava Land and Rainbow Ride are quite possibly the most open-ended levels, since they contain a lot of empty space between platforms in the form of lava or literal empty space. However, these levels still have a linear structure when you look at how the platforms are placed. Rainbow Ride, for example, starts with a simple carpet ride, but then the level breaks off into 3 different sections: the Red Coin Maze, the Magic Carpet section, and the Tricky Platforming section. The Magic Carpet section and the Platforming section break down even more, with one Magic Carpet taking you to the Flying Ship and one to the Greenhouse, and the Platforming section separating to a Simple Platforming section and the Tricky Triangles section. You can easily jump between sections, and the level contains a fair amount of shortcuts, but the layout of the platforms are linear in design, and continue to branch off into separate linear sections. Same for Lethal Lava Land. The level splits into a path to the Red Coin Puzzle and then the Big Bully, and a path to the log. You can jump between paths, but the ways you can go through the level are limited. Even the volcano's interior follows a linear structure. You can take the path in front of you or behind you, but both are linear. This level design, this linear platforming structure within 3D space, is what made Mario 64 successful. This was the first time many experienced 3D platforming, so having the levels follow a 2D structure made it easy for players to adapt and transition into 3D gaming. The only thing that throws a wrench into this, the only level that fails to follow this 2D structure, is Wet Dry World. Wet Dry World is contained in a box, much like other levels, but the way the level is designed is unlike any other level in Mario 64. The main gimmick of Wet Dry World is the changing water levels, that change both when you interact with the water crystals and when you first enter the painting, depending on the height of your entrance. However, the level holds no real linear design, it's completely open-ended. Sure, the level naturally steers you upwards, but the platforms don't have a real linear structure. The main methods you use to travel through the level are the water and floating platforms, or with these flinging robots. You don't really platform around the level like in other levels. You just try to get the water to the correct level and let the robots do the rest if need be. You can't really even take shortcuts like in the other levels either. The different levels of the main structure are just tall enough for it to be extremely difficult to jump up, and many of the platforms just float at heights you can't reach without the water being at the correct level. There is a secret underwater town you can reach by entering the tall cage in the corner and swimming down, but this is a one-way trip, especially when you drain the water in the town. It's a popular opinion online that this level just feels off, and is often labeled as the least popular in the game, and I believe the absence of the 2D platforming structure that's in other levels is the cause. You can just feel aimless while in this level, and unless you know exactly what you're doing, this level can be annoying to play through. Because this level is so different, because it lacks an underlying 2D structure and is a true 3D level, which while that kind of level works in other games like Mario Sunshine, Banjo-Kazooie, and Mario Odyssey, it feels out of place in Mario 64, and conflicts with the rest of the game's style. Mario 64's level design was made to transition players into 3D platforming and 3D gaming as a whole. Its underlying 2D structure is honestly genius, as it's something you won't notice unless you look for it, but without it, Mario 64 might not have been a success and may not have become as adored as it is now. Without this 2D structure, most new players would have been lost and would have possibly given up on trying to learn how to play a 3D platformer. but this level design expertly guides players subtly on how to navigate each level and enjoy Mario 64 to its fullest. This design is present throughout the game in every level, and is only really missing in Wet Dry World, which has led to the level getting a negative reputation. But as a whole, Mario 64 is still considered one of the greats, and that's largely in part to the genius level design that has a 2D structure with 3D gameplay.